Okay, so for my video today, I'm going to be looking at my questions to see if I can organize them into some better ways to get into more of how I can address these problems. So in my last blog, I kind of had talked about time being one of the things that was a common theme in my questions. So I'm just going to kind of read them out loud and then put them, I guess, in the categories that they need to be in. So this one is, how do I help my students living in extreme poverty? That one didn't really have to do with time so much. How can I do more project-based learning? That one is about time. How can I keep my district happy with I can statements, learning targets, and make it meaningful for my students at the same time? I'm going to put this one under time also, just because it does tend to take a lot of time to put all those things together and get organized every day. How do I get standardized tests to reflect what my students actually know? That's not a time thing. How do I cover it all? This is probably a big one for all teachers. How do we possibly fit it all in? So we'll put that under time. Because I teach kindergarten and lower elementary, it's play, socialization is a huge part of our day. And how can I incorporate more free play and social time in a day that's already jam-packed with all of the academic stuff that we have to cover? How do I apply the new ELA curriculum that my district is purchasing to my particular students? I'm going to put that under time. What can I do to keep my class size small for next year? This year I only have 21 students. It seems to be like the perfect number, but that's kind of not in the time. And how can I do more fun science and social studies lessons when there is limited time? Of course, that falls under time. So another way that I had thought about organizing these all were things that having to do with my students' learning versus kind of my job aspects of things outside of teaching. How do I help my students living in extreme poverty? Does have to do with them learning, definitely. Something that's, again, kind of out of my control, but it's not so much about my job. The standardized tests, unfortunately, that's what most of what I do is based on. So that is with my students' learning. And free play has to do with their learning. Project-based learning is their learning. Class size is small is more like my job type of a thing. How can I cover it all? That's more related to my actual job aspect. Science and social studies lessons is going to help them learn more with the fun stuff. The new ELA curriculum is going to help them learn. How do I keep my district happy with these I can statements? That's more having to do with my job than what my students are actually learning. And then the last way I was going to categorize was kind of things that are in my control, things that are out of my control. There is so much as teachers that is out of our control. So more fun science lessons. I do think that is something that I can control. Covering it all. This might be like a third category of if I can figure out the time to get everything done that could possibly be in my control. But more project-based learning could be in my control. The new ELA curriculum to my particular students, I'm going to put this again in the middle category. That's kind of a maybe kind of a thing that if I can cut out certain parts of it, I do think that I can apply it to my students. But how can I keep my district happy with the I can statements? I have to do it. It's part of my job. It's not something that's exactly in my control. Free play is something that I can control. How do I get standardized tests to reflect what my students actually know? Still working on that one. I feel like I do assessing with my students a lot, and it shows very differently than what they perform on the NWEA tests, so it can be difficult. What can I do to keep my class size small for next year? Again, that one's kind of out of my control. How do I help my students living in extreme poverty? We do have a lot of social programs to help these students, but we can only take it so far to the parents if they're willing to kind of reach out and get the help that is there for them. So I'm going to put this in the out of my control category.